now listening to the Zay Moore podcast.
I want to know what Zay thinks
There's a
about
few
that.
things that we got to address.
Black people got the swag. Black people set the trends. We are the culture. We got a reality star for our president. It's insane. Even if they try to erase black history out of schools, it's not going to erase black history. Because we've been here. Kendrick Lamar definitely beat Drake in that battle. Hands down. At the end of the day, I'm going to keep it real with my people. Because if we don't keep it real with each other, who will?
What's going on, everybody? You already know who it is. It's your boy, the one and only Zay Moore, and I want to welcome you back to a brand new episode of the Zay Moore podcast. Yeah. Today is Monday, October 20th, and we do have some things to talk about. We got a few things to get into today. Before we do that, though, I know I have to undress my absence. I know y'all like, you're just going to hop on and just do a show like nothing happened, like you ain't been going for 5 days. And I do apologize to my listeners. Again, I thank everybody who reached out to me and who's been still actively listening and sharing the show. I really appreciate it because that did help keep me alive in my absence. But just sometimes you got to take time for yourself, y'all. Like, and I do encourage anyone who has a hectic schedule to make sure that you don't forget about yourself, right? Because sometimes we're always on the go. You feel me? And it's like, sometimes you get burnt out, sometimes you have to really just take a moment, sit down and tend to yourself, right? Because you can't do anything. You can't be a good parent. You can't be a good employee. You can't be a good boss if you're not healthy, if you're not mentally stable, if you're not feeling well, you got to put yourself first. So that's really what I did. I took a week off to relax. We just had homecoming over at North Carolina A&T, so it was a lot going on that week. A couple of weeks prior, I went to New York. I had alcohol poisoning, but I still had to come back in the midst of, healing from that and work and do the pod, and it was just a lot going on, y'all. So like this month has been hectic for me, so I had to take a week off. So I'm grateful for those that understood it. But we back. And again, I just want to thank everybody for the support during my absence, y'all. Thank you. But without further ado, we definitely going to go ahead and get into the show. Hope y'all are ready. We got a few things to talk about, including the No Kings protests, government shutdown, the NBC removal of inclusion groups, and we're going to go over some quick updates on Diddy. I know I was covering that. I'm late on it, but, there are some stipulations he must follow once he gets out. So I want to run through that really quickly. But yeah, guys, all that and more, we're going to go ahead and get the show started. Give me a clap. Y'all ready? All right. Let's do this, y'all. Let's lock in. So we're going to start today's show with talking about what's happening with the U.S. federal government shutdown. So the U.S. federal government shutdown began on October 1st, 2025, after Congress failed to pass the necessary appropriations legislation for the 2026 year. As of October 20th, the shutdown has entered day 20, making it the longest full federal shutdown in U.S. history. The Senate is preparing for its 11th vote to try to end the shutdown. Some key impacts here to note is that hundreds of thousands of federal employees are affected, some furloughed, others required to work without pay. Imagine having to come in, work 8-9 hours, or lose your job. This is crazy. Critical operations are strained. The National Nuclear Security Administration has furloughed roughly 1,400 of their staff, reducing its workforce to fewer than 400, affecting nuclear weapon stockpile oversight. Services and programs at the state level are being disrupted. In Pennsylvania, some SNAP benefits, which of course is widely known as food assistance programs, have been paused due to lack of federal funding. Travel and transits are also impacted. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, reports significant flight delays due in part to staff shortages among air traffic controllers and TSA officers working without pay. Now, a lot of this is happening due to political dynamics. Of course, as we know, right? Political dynamics, a lot of this largely stems from, of course, the disagreement between the House Republicans, specifically the Speaker and some conservative members, and Senate Democrats over continuing resolution terms, healthcare, and foreign defense aids. Some cracks are appearing in GOP unity. For example, Republicans are voicing dissatisfaction with the continued shutdown. The shutdown's length increases the pressure on all sides, economically and politically. So basically, to sum all that up, right? What this is saying is that in order for this to kind of come to a halt, the United States Congress has to pass the appropriations legislation, that provides funding for government departments and agencies whose funding has lapsed. Now, unfortunately, right, this cannot happen until the president signs it into law. Without his signature, the funding does not become effective. A lot of what the Democrats is asking for is the same aids that the Trump administration has been attacking, right? That they've been aiming to cut. So it's not far-fetched that Trump and his team would be taking their sweet time to sign this, right? The Democrats are pushing for things like they want to extend and expand the enhanced health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. They're also seeking to reverse or block recent cuts to Medicaid. Again, all things that the Trump administration has been actively trying to cut back on. So, we will see how this ends up. I'll keep an eye on it. And again, I hope anyone who is affected by this, I hope that you're getting through. And there's a lot of resources out there right now. I will say that a lot of corporations, are understanding that a lot of people are affected. So, hey, don't hesitate to pick up the phone, call that bill, or, call whoever you need to call. Say, hey, I'm affected. What can I do? Can you help me out? Right. My grandmother used to always say, close your mouth, don't get fed. So, don't be afraid to speak up, call, see what options are available to you. Right. Because it's not any fault of your own that we have a president who doesn't want to just go ahead and sign this. Just sign it. Make sure that everyone is getting a piece of the pie, and let's just have a happy life. You feel me? But no, we got to make things difficult. We got to make shit difficult. But we're going to move on from this, and we'll keep an eye on the government shutdown. All right, guys, moving on. We're going to go ahead and talk about NBC. So NBC News has laid off approximately 150 staffers and eliminated dedicated news teams that focus on Black, Latino, Asian American, and LGBTQ plus issues. The decision comes amid a broader restructure at NBC Universal's news division and is being described internally as part of cost-cutting and streamlining efforts. Yeah, right. Continuing, executive commentary suggests the move is justified as eliminating overlap, improving efficiency, though critics say it diminishes coverage for historically marginalized groups. So this matters, guys, because when we talk about media representation, right, dedicated teams for marginalized communities help ensure coverage of issues that may otherwise be underreported. Things like police brutality, homelessness, stuff like that, right? The elimination of these teams raised concerns about shrinking attention to those issues. And from an industry context point, the media landscape is under pressure, declining ratings, ad revenue, network reorganization. So this move reflects both broader and economic pains in editorial decisions. So what we're looking for now is we're looking to see if NBC is going to maintain coverage of these issues, right? If you remove the dedicated groups that are put in place to make sure these issues are covered, will NBC themselves take the initiative to cover these stories? What I do want to talk about briefly, of course, right? We know that there was some pressure from the FCC merging, right? Although there's no evidence, to say that NBC News has eliminated its inclusion directly because of any directive, order, policy, or pressure from the administration. It is worth bringing up the fact that, everything that happened with Brendan Carr and the diminishing of the DEI programs, you could understand why NBC might have felt pressure to do what they did, right? So not saying that it's directly correlating, but I mean, it's it's something, because I don't think it's just a coincidence that, this happened, given that we've seen other media outlets or media companies rather take the same route. They're eliminating those DEI programs, those DEI departments. So yeah, again, we will just wait and see if NBC is going to do the right thing on their own merit, right? Just because just because you don't have those departments, this is really where, we'll see where people stand, right? Just because those departments are no longer there doesn't mean that these issues don't matter, right? So NBC News themselves should be covering these issues just, within other news, right? Because they're just as important. So we'll see what NBC does. And yeah, again, I feel like this is the time more than ever for creators, for Black voices to build platforms. You feel me? Like, get out there. I mean, you can literally talk to the people from your phone now, right? Because they are actively, it seems like, just trying to just cut down anything that involves our voices getting out there, our issues getting out there. So yeah, I do encourage anybody who is even thinking about doing a platform, do it. Because now more than ever is when the people need you, all right? All right, guys. All right. So we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the No Kings protests. I know you guys have heard about it, whether it's through your phone, social media, or on the news. So I want to give you a little insight as to into what it is and what's going on. So the No Kings protest is a movement described by organizers as opposing perceived authoritarianism by Donald Trump. They frame it as rejecting the idea of a king-style leader and emphasizing democratic governance. On October 18, 2025, and what organizers say was a coordinated nationwide effort, over 7 million people across 2,700 events in all 50 states reportedly participated. Wow, that's great. The protests were mostly peaceful and used creative approaches as a part of the messaging. I want to go really quickly to Fox News to get some initial info on the No Kings protest, and then we'll be right back.
Organizers say the first No Kings rally back in June drew about 5 million people at more than 2,000 rallies. They expect this weekend's demonstrations to have an even bigger turnout. They anticipate more than 2,500 protests across the country, about 450 more than were planned in June. A statement from the event's website states since June, President Trump has doubled down. His administration is sending masked agents into our streets, terrorizing our communities. They are targeting immigrant families, profiling, arresting, and detaining people without warrants. Several Democrats are expected to participate, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Connecticut Senators Chris Murphy and Richard Blumenthal, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, DNC Chair Ken Martin, among others. House Speaker Mike Johnson is slamming the event and Democrats for taking part.
The Democrat leaders are going to join for a big party out on the National Mall. They're going to descend on our Capitol for their much-anticipated so-called No Kings rally. We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America rally. You're going to bring together the Marxists, the socialists, the Antifa advocates, the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party. That is the modern Democratic Party.
But independent Senator Bernie Sanders says the rally is meant to do the opposite, like upholding the values of the Constitution and pushing back against what they say is authoritarianism.
Again, that was NBC, guys. The protest entered the spotlight as the government shutdown continues and as institutional stress increases. Some Republicans, of course, as we heard just now, Mike Johnson, criticized the movement, calling it ideologically extreme or politically motivated. President Trump dismissed the protests as a joke and claimed they were funded by radical left groups. I think all of this is great. I think that I'm happy that people are coming together. And I'm even more excited about some of the Republicans, although a lot of them still are supporting him. From what I'm seeing, according to the Washington Post, right, there was a poll done that suggests around 21% of Republicans are saying that Trump is exceeding the powers available to him as president. And they do feel he's just gone too far, and in short, Republicans are worrying that, his style and his decisions may actually be damaging to long-term institutional stability, right? And it doesn't matter what side you're on, left or right, right? If there's no stability, both sides are affected. So, I think people are starting to like really wake the fuck up, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying seeing people come together. I'm enjoying the realization of it all. Some things to watch, right? While the protest is going on, right? Although it's great. One, might ask, will the protest sustain momentum? We see that large one-day events can be powerful, they can be impactful, but follow through is the goal, right? So will there be some sort of follow through? And also impact on elections, right? And policies. Will this movement translate into political or legislative change, right? Will this motivate people to, put their vote in the opposite direction? Again, that is another goal. So we'll have to wait and see, right? We'll just kind of have to watch how all of this plays out. But again, I think that the No Kings protest is a great thing, and I'm happy to see it. All right, guys, and we got some updates on the diddler. It's kind of old news, but in case you haven't heard, of course, we know he was recently sentenced to the 50 months, which is about 4 years and 2 months in prison for 2 counts of interstate transportation to engage in prostitution. Diddy will also serve 5 years of supervised release, and he was fined $500,000. Sheesh, it's crazy. But I wanted to get into a little bit of some of the special conditions that Diddy must abide by once he is released. So some of those include, of course, as I just mentioned, a term of 5 years of supervised. So 5 years supervised once he is released. That followed by participation in outpatient treatment programs for substance use and mental health care. He is also required to participate in an approved program for domestic violence. He must maintain lawful employment full time unless a supervising court excuses him. He must not communicate with someone he knows to be engaging in criminal activity. He must not own, possess, or have access to a dangerous weapon or firearm. His person, property, and residence may be subject to searches by the supervising officer without warrant under certain conditions, and he must refrain from contacting the victims involved in his case. So those are some of the special conditions that Diddy has to abide by once he is out. I think rightfully so. I think everything that we just went through will help him stay in the right direction and to keep him out of trouble. It'll aid to his recovery. I'm all here for it, because again, don't condone anything that Diddy did, never did, but he always held like a special place in my heart musically, because I did look up to him coming up in the game. Again, it's unfortunate what went down, but I feel like there's a lot of victims. I feel like Diddy is a victim of whatever he went through as a child, and he turned around and created more victims, and hurt people, right? And again, that's not me making any excuses, but we always have to go back to the source in situations like this, right? And there clearly wasn't something right in Diddy's home or in his life where he grew up and executed these type of actions, but all that is behind him, right? And he's got his sentence, he's got his special condition. So at this point, as long as he stays on the right path, it can be only up from here. But y'all know what that sound means. We've made it to the end of the episode. That's all the trending topics I got for y'all today. I want to thank you so much for tuning into the Zay Moore podcast. Y'all know I appreciate it. Before I go, I got to remind you to follow me at the ZayFiles_ at Instagram, the Zay Moore podcast at Instagram, so you can stay up to date on all the latest. Later on today, we got Ask Zay coming out. I got some new questions that I got sent. We're going to talk about it. Well, I'm going to answer them, and we're going to have a good time later on today. But I want to thank y'all for tuning into this episode of the Zay Moore podcast. Again, shout out to Costa Rica. Shout out to Ireland for holding me down, and to all the U.S. cities and states. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening while I was gone. I really appreciate it. Share this episode. Tell a friend, tell a family member to check your boy out. And until next time, it's always one thing and one thing only. Peace.